I have been seeing so many Islam videos on my For You page, and with that, I have seen so many non-Muslims talk about their experiences with Muslims, both in the United States and in predominantly Muslim countries. Now, this has been very interesting because, as most Americans know, our Western media has made us quite fearful of Muslims. And you can kind of watch that barrier dissolve when these people are talking about their experiences, because they are actually meeting and interacting with everyday Muslims, and they're not just hearing about like the Taliban or Al-Qaeda, the only people that Western media tells us about. So anyway, all of their stories pretty much always sound the same, and that is that Muslim people were by far the most hospitable, least judgmental, the least stingy, literally wanting to help in every single way that they can to people that need help. Now, this obviously makes sense. If you read on Islam, there is so much that they do to close that class gap, and they see that if Allah has blessed them, they are supposed to use that to disperse out and help bless other people. Now, it reminded me of something that I experienced in an evangelical church. Now, this story is so bad, and people are going to get all riled up because I'm bashing Christianity. I am critical of Christianity because I was born and raised in Christianity. And again, to clarify, because I have to do this every time, I am talking about Western American evangelical Christianity. I am not talking about Eastern Orthodox or Catholicism. The reason why I make that distinction is because our culture here, just as a country in general, even outside of Christianity, is rooted in consumerism and materialism. It bleeds into Christianity. So I was at this church, and the pastor was telling this story about how he was at the park with his kids and he saw these other kids there, and he wanted to tell them about the gospel. I'm going to pause because I found that to be a little strange. You do not need to verbally tell someone the good news. You can literally let them feel it and experience it through you if you are radiating God's love. Anyway, so he wanted to tell them about the gospel, and he did not, because he felt like they would not be able to even understand what he was talking about or what he was saying, and that there was no chance that they've even heard about God or Jesus, whatever he said. And he goes on to explain how these kids looked really rough. They were covered in dirt. He just kept reiterating how bad they looked. And I was waiting for the moment of him having the realization of, oh wow, that is so antithetical to Jesus's entire mission. And to have that point of doing damage control and saying, whoa, that was so problematic. But he didn't. He just kept going, and I was so confused and looking around because I was like, that could have been a really good story. That could have been a great revelation to have. And he didn't have it, even re-explaining the story. I just feel like that was such a ridiculously clear display of the deeply rooted issues, not in just religion in the United States, but just in the United States. It bleeds into our religion. Versus countries that actually have cultures and traditions that are not rooted in materialism and consumerism. Let's talk about the ever so scary jihad. The word jihad is derived from a root shared with words that relate to striving, struggle, and resistance. According to the Prophet, the greater jihad is the struggle that all Muslims wage within and against themselves. The lesser jihad relates to the struggle with others, which can take the form of war. Jihadism is a modern term wrongly used in the West to denote a violent and extremist Islamist worldview that has nothing to do with the Quranic jihad. The word jihad is typically mistranslated as holy war, either through a lack of understanding or in some cases deliberate misinterpretation. The narrowing down and reduction of the meaning of this word has led to misconceptions and negative reactions on the part of Muslims and non-Muslims alike. The word jihad, as found in the Quran, can have a variety of meanings, the purest of which is an internal struggle of the spirit. Jihadism and the related jihadi and jihadist is a relatively recent term used mostly in the West to describe extreme Islamic militant movements who employ violence to achieve their ends. Jihadists are defined as those who consider violent struggle necessary to eradicate obstacles to restoring God's rule on earth and defending the Muslim community or ummah against infidels. Such groups believe that jihad is a collective obligation that must be fulfilled by every able Muslim. Those Muslims who do not share this worldview are typically labeled deviants and are considered legitimate targets. In the modern era, the term jihadism is particularly linked with militant groups such as Al-Qaeda and Islamic State. The word is not used by most Muslims because they see it as associating a noble concept with illegitimate violence. Jihad through the ages. How jihad has been interpreted and implemented has been influenced to a large extent by the politics of the time. In the early days of Islam, jihad often took the form of armed struggle. From the outset, the Prophet was forced to defend himself and his followers from the Meccans, who first persecuted the Muslims and then tried to eliminate them altogether. But in taking up arms, Muhammad adhered to the lessons of the Quran. If you punish, let your punishment be commensurate with the wrong that has been done to you, but it shall be best for you to endure with patience. Armed jihad occurred under the Umayyads when the Caliphate and, by extension, Islam was expanding its territory. In the more peaceable Abbasid period that followed, jihad became linked to personal inner struggle. In the recent era, the almost exclusive use of jihad to mean holy war has been employed by critics who suggest Muslims are on a mission to Islamicize the world. Conversely, some Muslims have reacted by denying any connection between jihad and warfare. Both positions are flawed. The Quran is clear that the meaning of jihad is far broader than, but does not exclude, fighting an enemy. People have wondered what book I keep reading from. It is the Islam book, Big Idea Simply Explained. And this isn't written by one author. It actually has 11 different contributors in here, a lot of which have doctorate degrees in theology and religious thought. The second book, Secrets of Divine Love. I'm actually going to share some passages from here. It is actually an Islamic book. As a Westerner, there are so many misconceptions that we have been led to believe about Islam. And even saying the word Islam used to feel like a bad word. It's insane. I never would have thought to read anything on Islam, but I really feel like an entirely new depth to my experience with God has been opened since I have started reading on it. I'm gonna butcher these Arabic words, but bear with me. It is not a surprise that in Arabic the word for human being is insan, which many scholars suggest is derived from the root words nisyan, which means forgetfulness, and unsiya, which means intimacy, to love, to be loved, and to become close to. At the very root of being human, we can see that we were not created to find God, but rather to remember and return to the intimate relationship we already have with Him. Our journey on earth is not just to God, it is from God, with God, and into the love of God. The path to God is less of a spiritual path and more of a spiritual undressing of all that prevents you from seeing that in this very moment, God is with you wherever you are. So, in the Bible, we know that obviously the whole original sin theory falls on the back of women. We were the ones that tempted Adam and were the reason for the fall of mankind. And Generally, in Christianity, women are not to be trusted or placed in positions of any type of authority. We are also seen as less spiritually capable, and we need a mediator, which is typically our husbands. There are also several verses in the Bible stating that women need to remain silent and that it is shameful for them to speak in church, and that they should also just do as their husband orders, even if their husband is failing in their relationship with God. Now, a huge contrast to the original sin theory in Islam is that they don't believe in original sin. They believe in something called the fitra, which is the innate part of every human being. It is the pure, perfect reflection of God within a person. It cannot be damaged or altered through sin. It is always pure and holy. Women are also, in the Quran, seen as equal in the eyes of Allah. There are no mediators. A woman is guided by Allah, not her husband. But that does not exclude that there is an expected leadership by the man or the husband in the house. And I'm not saying that anything is perfect or one is like amazing and one's not. I'm just shining some light on some things that Western Christians don't understand.